Check it out, check it out now. Check it out, check it out now. Check it out, check it out now. I got a bitch to suck my dick till I nut. Spit it on my gut and slurp that shit back up. Ain't that a slut? She even take it in the butt. Fuck for about an hour, now she wanna go to shower. You didn't know that we be pissing on hoes?
Pikmin 3. Okay. Now, before we get started, I've got to get some housekeeping/disclaimers out of the way. First, as you may not know, this video on Pikmin 3 and why it stresses me out is actually the fourth, or fifth, depending on how you look at it, in a series I've done on all the Pikmin games, starting with the first and 4 things I thought you'd need to know about it, followed by the second and how it is figuratively and literally poisonous, which itself was followed by a standalone deep dive on one of its deep dungeon levels, the Submerged Castle, which of course is being followed up by with today's video. In the past, when I've gone over a series like this, watching the previous ones wasn't necessarily a prerequisite. If any point I'm trying to make has some sort of dependency to any information from a previous video, I try to inject it here first. However, with this one I feel a little different. Pikmin is huge, it's massive, so I feel like having been immersed in it for so long working on this video, there may be information I've come to take for granted as obvious and so haven't properly highlighted it in what's to come, but have in previous videos. So I hope this video can be viewed properly on its own without the others, but that may not be the case, and I may not be able to tell. What I can tell you though is that I've tried my best to ensure that if there's anything left behind in this video, you should be able to pick it up by watching the previous ones later. That's to say, I don't think the order of my Pikmin videos really matters, so my call to action, I invite you to check out the other Pikmin videos whenever you have a chance. This is the fourth in not a series, but rather what I've tried to make a set of videos about this video game series, a personal favorite of mine. Whatever you feel more comfortable with, either checking out the previous videos before or after this, I encourage you to do. Otherwise, I mean, it's your life, fam, fucking live it. And secondly, this isn't something I've ever had to do before, but I just want to disclaim that this video's gameplay footage might look a little weird. Very frequently you'll see the game look like it's paused and have the camera fly around all over the place. I have a feeling this will be very distracting, and I just wanted to mention it in advance to try to mitigate the impact of it on y'all, and let's be real, the amount of comments I'll be getting for years to come about what the fuck is going on with the camera. Now, the reason this happens is because this is a Wii U game, and so some of the gameplay happens on the gamepad screen. During these sorts of interactions, the main display plays a complementary role, and so without all the UI, it kind of looks goofy. I did record quite a bit of gamepad footage, but I'm not going to be including it over the entire video. I only want to have that on screen when I'm specifically trying to make a point about it. At all other times, yeah, you're going to see this weird camera darting stuff, and I just wanted to give you a heads up because there's not really much I could do. This is what TV gameplay looks like of this game. So with all that out of the way, let's finally dive into it. And by dive into it, I mean start with a quick explanation of the previous games in the series. Something really important to know about the Pikmin games is that they've never really been games for the sake of being games, if you know what I mean. This series hasn't really had the straightforward luxury of being an idea translated simply into a game. Each, including the last, had ulterior motives for being the ways they did, and understanding the conditions of their releases is important when it comes to understanding their substances. We've said it once, we've said it a million times, but Pikmin 1 was a tech demo first and a game second. Computers? Turns out they're pretty complicated to explain, and most people don't really care about the nitty-gritty. For the same sort of reason humans are simplified as being batteries in the Matrix, Nintendo had to make it very digestible for people what their new hardware could do. GameCube's biggest enhancements were in memory and processing, so these guys needed a piece of running software, a launch title that showed those off. What does an application like that look like? Well, it needs to have a lot of different things happening all at once, and it needs to show a lot more looking much better. Now, a lot of games on the new console showed what it's like to render lots of high poly 3D models with much higher resolution textures, all thanks to more RAM. But none so much as Pikmin showcased multi-threading of all things at such a large scale. Pikmin raised exactly what the GameCube console was about so perfectly, it's almost as though that was its primary goal. That's because that's exactly what it was. Pikmin didn't start as an idea about a game where you command a force of tiny little workers to accomplish tasks larger than themselves. It started a demonstration of technology, of graphics and physics and AI and threading. A game was just painted on top of it. A good game? Yes, it luckily so happened to be. A well thought out one though? Considering the main challenge in the game, a time limit, being as easy to implement as it is to stamp your goddamn postage, I'd argue not. Miyamoto's best efforts to merge classic game mechanisms and cutting-edge technology were enough to make a very enjoyable short little game, but nothing I think anyone in their right mind could call sustainable. But it's okay, that's what Pikmin 2 and its two new directors' covert goal was, to forget about trying to sell a piece of hardware and to look at those gameplay mechanisms and reevaluate what sort of game Pikmin was better suited to be. And the first thing you notice on starting up the game, the first thing you'll see anyone involved in its production mention right away when it's the topic of discussion, is how freaking quickly it makes clear that the time limit is gone. The game wears this fact on its sleeve. I even found something pretty funny. One of the directors referred to this, design change, a change from how things were done in the first game, literally just the removal of something that previously existed. Man referred to this as one of the biggest strengths of Pikmin 2. That's like Woody shows up and says, hey, one of the greatest strengths of this boot is that there is no longer a snake in it. Fucking fantastic. Pikmin 2 wasn't here just to be a game, it was here to be a second take at a game that was a little too busy selling a console to find a way to wrangle together an otherwise very well realized set of systems and ideas. Completely opposite to the arcade-style challenge of the previous game, Pikmin 2's unlimited time limit and procedurally generated dungeons turned it into some sort of hybrid, survival roguelike game, with its developers trying to stick its gameplay closer to the action label than strategy. Not to mention spending an almost absurd amount of effort on story and world building through flavor text en masse. Did it make for a good game? I definitely think so. It was certainly more engaging on more levels. It could take a well-paced player weeks to beat, but also afforded different kinds of completion goals to different kinds of players. The makers of this game talk time and time again about trying to open it up and make it more approachable, for the reason being, I can only assume that they thought Pikmin 1 appealed only to a very niche audience. So finally, that brings us to Pikmin the Third. What's the deal this time, huh? Well, the story started out fine with it just being another rethink of the first game again, though this time built from the ground up for the Wii and with Miyamoto back on as director, who really did not seem to be a big fan of Pikmin 2. But suddenly, history would find a way to repeat itself, because Pikmin 3 wound up coming out years delayed and as a launch title for a new console, the Wii U. Now, okay, technically it was months late of the console's actual release date, but as far as first-party titles being shown in an effort to sell the console, Pikmin 3 was the big boy. Once again, a Pikmin game found itself under the same director and under the same circumstances, and then some. It had to, once again, go out of its way to sell a console to demonstrate its capabilities, though this time that wouldn't be accomplished as easily for obvious reasons. But new this time, on top of Pikmin having to sell the Wii U, it also had to build the damn thing at its own cost. Supposedly not much of what was made was kept during the migration from Wii to Wii U, so rebuilding everything from scratch kept them busy enough. But as one of the first teams to be making a project for the new system, many times the developers of the game were forced to lend their efforts to the development of that system, building technology and features for the console that were incomplete and were needed in order to serve their game. Kind of the opposite of the story of the first game, a tech demo that was very quickly filled out into a game. This time, a collection of new ideas for a game was forced to become a quick tech demo. So what you get for the first time in the series is a game whose design has mutated, whose design is trying to be progressed towards something, but simultaneously is trying to do something completely unrelated, showcase all of the possible use cases of a, let's face it, an experimental gaming interface. An experimental gaming interface that doesn't enhance the game in any natural sort of way, that can't really show itself off without the game specifically accommodating it with even more new features. So how about we take a look at some of the design changes first, because I think that's a good idea and I don't hear anyone objecting, and to make this flow better, let's not dive into any major criticisms just yet. This is just, hey, here's what's changed, you dig? So, new Pikmin game, and given what we've seen so far, your first question should be, well, is the snake back in the boot? Is the time limit back? The answer, I want to dramatically say, is yes and no. But it's kind of just yes, but also not really. Fuck. Okay, so here's the deal. Pikmin 3 brings back the idea of a hard time limit from the first game, but recontextualizes it by kinda merging, or rather, a better description would be making it dependent on a free treasure collecting mode similar to the second game. That's confusing. Basically, a time limit technically exists, but that time limit is presented differently, now in the form of portions of food which you consume one of each in-game day. The difference is that your goal in the game, collecting items, directly impacts that supply of food, because the items you're collecting are fruits. Though again, like how in Pikmin 2 different treasures had different monetary values that were subtracted from your company's debt upon collection, the amount of juice processed is variable from fruit to fruit. Ultimately, the same time limit as was in the first game and the same treasure hunting mode as was in the second game are both present here, but now they're bonded by a superglue handshake. Also, like the rest of the series, this change is represented in the story, which is now about collecting fruits from an alien planet and returning their seeds home to avoid a food crisis. As a consequence of this, though, one of the most ambitious features of Pikmin 2 had to be removed: the dungeons. The hyper-focused, viciously challenging, borderline unfair dungeon segments were only really allowed to exist in the second game because, for as hard as it could become inside dungeons, the zero linear difficulty of the overworld and its unlimited supply of days with which to let you reproduce the population of your army balanced it out. The fact that you could literally not lose in Pikmin 2, that the game provided a built-in reset button, the fact that the game was unfairly biased to your success made excuse for the sorts of insane gauntlets that the dungeons were. But in the absence of this, and in the presence once again of a time limit, these sorts of dungeons could not be available, and so they got axed. Now, to make up for the straight real estate offered by such randomly generated dungeons, Pikmin 3 made the overworld levels much larger by splitting some into different areas divided by loading screens. So yeah, you'll still explore a cave every now and again, the difference being that now its only purpose is as a change of scenery. A whole new feature, though, introduced in this game was a 3-captain system. Now yeah, prior we'd had 2 captains, but the adjoining of a third as well as the extension of some assistive automation features made this a big deal, particularly opening up your ability to multitask during play. Now of course, the game also added 2 new Pikmin types and removed 2 others for being partial redundancies. Rock Pikmin are the new purple guys. They hit really hard during combat, and they can also be used to smash glass and crystal obstacles. They, however, lost the ability to lift 10 times their weight, but that's okay because any puzzles revolving around that idea don't exist. The white Pikmin were completely removed from the game along with all of the poison gas related puzzles that they were required for. So much for that whole thesis. Good riddance. Taking their spot, though, is the new and very interesting flying Pikmin type. They, and their applications all around, are really fucking creative. You'd think this would open up a whole new vertical dimension to gameplay, you know, having puzzles where you lift things and whatever, and you'd be right, yeah. But what I really thought was cool was how many water puzzles they were needed for. What you learn is that since they can fly, they can follow a captain by hovering over the water, but since the captain can't throw them from underwater, you have a limited control and have to work around that. Especially considering how late into the game you unlock the final Pikmin type, the blue ones, getting the flying ones first gives you a whole different perspective on water hazards and allows them to remain a very serious threat all the way until the last act without being overplayed or boring. Further in the direction of that action game hybridization, Pikmin 3 revamped its combat system, and I really wish I had more to say than what I'm about to. See, Pikmin's always been the sort of game that you can very quickly do a bit of pushing and shoving with the bad guys, and since they don't respawn for a very long time, eventually pretty much forget that there's even fighting in the game. So not that it really matters too much, but they added a lock on camera which makes it easier to target Pikmin throws at specific body parts of enemies, which, okay, fair enough, this game makes a bit more of a deal out of. And there's also a charge command that sends all Pikmin out to attack at once, as well as some new dodge buttons that I tried out exactly twice in the game purposefully. First immediately after unlocking it, and second during this fight. It seems weird because the old trumpet command from the first and second games covered both of these use cases, and then some. I really liked the trumpet because it gave you control over the Pikmin's positions relative to you while walking. It was an invaluable tool in the dungeons whose tricky layouts and traps often required you to keep an eye on your army's formation. I guess the removal of dungeons might again be to blame for this, but I have talked enough about how Pikmin walk for one video. Finally, the last major change this game brought to the game was it removed camera controls. The old games had a camera that was kind of like a cross between an old 3D Zelda and a racing game. As you moved, the camera would stay fixed independent of your facing direction, but at any point you could force it behind you with a tap of the Z button. The camera's elevation could also be toggled to a few different heights. Some were probably more suited to exploration and others to fighting and survival, but I relied a lot on the furthest view that gave me the widest sight. It let me spot landmarks and paths up ahead that helped me trace paths in my mind through these large networks from where I was to where I wanted to go and how to get back to my ship before sundown. The locking aspect of it was a particular help for this. The camera wasn't without its problems though, let's be real. For as great as it was to be able to look at as much of your surroundings, oftentimes your surroundings weren't so great looking. I mean, by today's standards, no doubt, but even back then, I mean, yeah, it's hard to make models and textures that hold up given a variable camera distance. Sure, the camera's controls made me feel comfortable seeing what I wanted to see, how I wanted to see it, but it also let me see a lot of technical jank that swiftly take you out of it. And so, as you can tell when it comes to this game, and as I've so masterfully segued into, the camera controls were removed for a reason, of course. They were put aside to make place for a dynamic camera system that was better able to show off how freaking beautiful this game can look. I mean, after all, Pikmin 3 is running on some fancy new hardware that it's trying to convince you to buy. Gotta show that off. Damn, this game is gorgeous. It sounds weird to be talking about this in 2018, but this was one of Nintendo's first-party games being rendered with visuals considerate of a screen more than 480 pixels high. That's why the camera locks, because there's so much more you can do in terms of those visuals when you direct the camera rather than allowing the player to. So this allowed them to show it all off as best as they could. With this, it was possible for them to apply techniques like blurs to the contours of the screen that produce a cool tilt-shift effect that for the first time in the series sells the scale of the world to you. The automatic camera and its perspective make you feel like you're a kid kneeling in the grass looking down at an ant colony scuttering around, but other times by direction of its designers, its pans and tilts can allow you to see these worlds from a whole different point of view. Sometimes it's just to present these breathtaking environments to you wholly rather than by a magnifying glass view at a time. But at other points it's to make you feel claustrophobic or draw your eye to something or set the stage for a difficult boss fight. And you know what? Okay, I know it's a meme to say that the fruits look good, but like, I don't know, man, it's the only game that's ever made me crave grapes enough to get them out of season. There's a foundation to this, man. Now, time to address the elephant-sized gamepad in the room. Yeah, not only was Pikmin tasked with showing off the quality of visuals to expect on this new console, but it also had on its plate to try to explain to gamers what the hell this thing was all about. Often forgotten though, one of the Wii U's gimmicks was that games could be played directly on the gamepad screen while, I don't know, your parents watched TV or some shit. Because hell yeah, that's a problem that needed to be solved by a video game controller. So not only did the game have to show us all how the gamepad could enhance gameplay as a secondary display part of this revolutionary two-screen setup and new means of interaction, but it also had to show us all how it worked without all that shit and on a single screen. Talk about conflicting requirements. To make matters worse, recent Wii remakes of the first two Pikmin games set a new standard for its controls by using pointer tech. So, what you had was a game that was best played with a pair of fucking nunchucks that now needed to be played on both two screens at a time and one at a time, all at the same time, somehow. So Nintendo did what Nintendo does best. They killed two birds with two stones, or rather killed a multitude of birds with an equal number of stones by allowing you to play the game basically however the heck you wanted with whatever control type. Which, yeah, okay, let's be fair, is an exclusive kind of premium personalization that wasn't something you could do on any other platform. You can play with the TV and the pad, you can play with just the pad. You got a different controller? Hell yeah, it'll work. What if you got nunchucks but no TV? It's got you covered. Or of course there's my favorite setup, the all-dressed. That's got the TV for the main action, nunchucks for smacking bad boys, and the gamepad nicely propped up for map and other info displays. It might be an absolute mess, and yes, the fact that the two different wireless devices part of this kill their batteries at different rates is a goddamn pain in the ass. But once you've got your ass planted on the couch and the gamepad in reach and the Wiimote visible to the motion sensor bar, guys, whatever, call me a loser for putting it this way, but I don't know how else to describe a play session like this, but as a real hardcore gaming experience. Small aside, but this old Wii and Wii U generation mentality towards control schemes is something Nintendo could definitely learn from today. Coming from there, it's kind of shocking when recent games like Let's Go to the Polls Pikachu put zero effort into normalizing the gameplay experience between TV mode and handheld mode, totally fucking with accessibility of the game to some players. What a mess. Now, as far as the gamepad's uses go when you've got your shit set up like mine, yo, let me lay it on you. First of all, obviously enough, while you're playing, the gamepad displays an image of the parts of the level that you've so far visited. You remember that disclaimer about the camera going all jank though? Well, here it is. At any point, you can drag your finger across the screen's map to look around. While you're doing this, the game pauses and the television displays an in-game bird's eye view of the point you're currently dragging over, letting you scout ahead and check out the positions of enemies and other obstacles. So that's what's been going on the whole time. Later in the game, as you unlock more captains, this map dragging feature is turned into an automation tool for captains. With a captain selected, you can drag your map to a point you'd like them to go to, then select to have them autopilot themselves and their Pikmin over there, allowing you to switch to another captain and continue multitasking. The map and the captain controls were the biggest deals on the gamepad. Aside from that, it was also used to track other information like the Pikmin numbers, and from time to time the story would hijack it for some fourth wall breaking shenanigans. It had a camera function that let you use gyro to snap pics of the world that would then appear in the world map screen, which is really cool and all, but this is a game with a time limit. You don't got time to sit around snapping pics. And of course, one of the coolest things, at the end of each day while your stats appeared on TV, the gamepad would show a sped-up version of your entire day. It was a great way to reflect on what you'd accomplished and what you should set out to do the next day. Really cool. Now, while the hardware and UI were the two biggest changes that Pikmin had to mention in its pitch for the Wii U, the new console also came with a new approach to online features. Pikmin 3 opted for easy mode here, including a simple leaderboard and bell-curved plot to compare yourself against other players once you'd beat the game. But the crazier way it went for was by being one of the first Nintendo games to ever offer paid downloadable content. The Wii U came packed with a brand new eShop that promised to sell such expansion packs for games. And when it came to this one, they decided that extra paid missions in the mission mode would be a good fit. Historically, I haven't brought up the extra mission modes in Pikmin games because they're not really something I've been too invested in, but I also have nothing to complain about when it comes to them. Evidently, this time that's different. But now's not the right time to whine. I'm holding my horses. We'll get there. So now, at this point in the video, we've got the lay of the land. We have series context. We know what the game was naturally trying to improve on and change. We have a picture of the environment the game was released in, and we know what sorts of additional impacts the environment had on its design. So now the field's clear for me to, well, tell you what I think finally. So for all that talk about it, it's only fair to start with the hybrid time limit and treasure hunting system. I'll give it to you straight. It's a great middle ground. It shows some serious effort. Cause yeah, I might love Pikmin 2 a whole lot, but not everyone liked its lack of a time limit. The pure treasure hunting wasn't for everyone, and while I feel very strongly for it, I can understand why that is and why this is a very well thought out approach. But here's why I still think it's flawed. Like I've said, a lot of what I loved most about Pikmin 2 and what gave it a different identity than its prequel was dependent on there not being a hard time limit in the main game. With this removal removed, a lot of other things made no sense anymore, like the dungeons, yada yada. However, with many features from the second game now removed in the third, those that remained were not left unaffected by the implications of such a hybrid time limit and treasure hunting system. Big set-piece sections like boss fights and particularly tricky puzzles that previously could ramp up their difficulty and time necessary to complete to unprecedented levels could now, well, not. An in-game day in Pikmin 3 is 15 minutes long, meaning that everything, and I mean everything in the game, needed to be made doable in less than 15 minutes. Many were dumbed down or otherwise made easier, but others that stuck to their guns suffered in the opposite way. It sucks ending a day with a puzzle left unsolved because you had no way of knowing when you started it that you just didn't have enough minutes left to complete it. Boss fights mirror this too. Some feel way too easy, but those that don't let up have the problem of being exactly too long. You might have enough time in the day to make it to the boss arena and defeat them, but you might not have enough time to carry all the items they drop back to base by sundown, making you waste a whole day back out in the field just to get that done. The attempted solution I like, but feels shoehorned in. A boss's health doesn't regenerate anymore overnight, so the idea is that you can spend multiple days on a single boss if you're not very good. If you are though, you'll have that problem of not having enough time to carry shit back. I have played every Pikmin game, except for this one, multiple times to completion, and this crap happened to me so many times in this game that by the end of it I started adopting a strategy of not actually taking items all the way to my ship, but rather dropping them off right close by. That way, when the game would fuck me over and force me to play a whole new day just to pick up something I hadn't enough time left to, at least I could keep myself occupied by picking up all the other crap I'd left for myself. This is fucking ridiculous. Obviously, it's a disappointment that the game's daily time limit prevents it from throwing much more creative challenges at you. I mean, look no further than how the fancy new 3-captain setup is used. There are just a handful of puzzles and only one boss fight in the game that seem to be aware of the fact that you can control 3 captains at a time now, and that 3 captains can also launch each other. Technically, that one boss fight doesn't even, it only asks for 2 at once to battle the spider dude who can climb between these 2 isolated arenas. This is something that could have worked in the second game, man. The few puzzles though, yeah, they're decent. These rare moments are where the game finally seems self-aware and really shows off what all these changes are capable of when they're all on the same page. But their scarcity that I'm critiquing here is due to nothing more than the fact that, shit, dude, their solutions take a lot of time to execute. Time that you don't really have under a strict 15-minute time limit. And just to be crystal freaking clear, when I say 15 minutes, I'm not deducting all the time it takes you to just mosey on your slow ass to where you want to go, or pick out your Pikmin or carry stuff back. You know how people say you sit on the toilet for like a quarter of your life or whatever? Yeah, I'm not counting that when I say 15 minutes. What I'm trying to say, I guess, is that the reinstantiation of the time limit and the consequence of it being the removal of such dungeon-type levels that operated without it cursively disables the game from properly invoking the complex 3-captain system it has. What you expect coming from an expansion of an existing system like this is that the game's levels will be designed in a way where you're doing things that only 3 captains could do together. But instead, what you're really doing is the sort of stuff a single captain could do. You're just doing it 3 times at once, spread across the map. What I'm saying is, you're not playing one game with 3 captains. Stressfully, you're playing 3 games each with 1 captain. And what I'm trying to say is that I think that's the fault of the time limit. Honestly, I think my favorite parts of the game are when some story beats limit you to only 1 or 2 captains. Once you get all 3, it becomes a huge mess. And not necessarily because there's so much going on, but because the more captains you have, the less Pikmin you have. See, Pikmin games have always had a hard 100 Pikmin limit. However, in the past, the games only allowed you to mosey on around with 1 captain at a time, so it wasn't a big deal. In this game, you start with only 1 captain and massive squads on you, which feels great. But as the limit doesn't change and your numbers of captains and Pikmin types do, your knees begin to buckle under the weight of all the bullshit. The pace of the game is destroyed with 3 captains. Splitting the squads up evenly, that's about 33 Pikmin per captain. Considering that many items and enemy corpses take upwards of 5, sometimes even more than 10 Pikmin to carry back to base, that severely limits the general effectiveness of a single captain. It forces you to practically tie a lifeline between yourself and your base that you'll constantly be trekking back to restock on Pikmin. 33 dudes in this game is not very much, and that's talking just general use. But what murders the pace even more is when you finally unlocked all 5 Pikmin types. Since you never really know what's ahead and it takes a lot of time to go back to base, it always makes sense to try to bring a few of each type of dude when you go out so that you can tackle any obstacle. But when it gets to the point you're trying to split too few guys so many ways, you more often than not don't have enough of a single type to handle tasks they're needed for. Combat and retrieval also suffer as a result of the divided, unchanged limit. Simple combat encounters from the beginning get harder as you try evenly distributing your dudes and you have less power to make all-out rushes very effective. That tied to the fact that it takes so many guys to carry the bodies back, proportionally to how many you're working with at least, and like never before you're faced with making the tough decision between growing your Pikmin population by collecting food but forcing yourself to head back to base every 5 minutes, or saving time by not sending dudes back and just continuing to push forward. And I think it's unfair to ask the player that sort of question. Now, here's something I try to avoid doing: recommending fixes. You know what would fix this? If Pikmin, after carrying food back to base, would return to the captain that issued them. You know why I think this is a fair recommendation? Because the game does this with other shit. Send a Pikmin to lay down a bridge and they always come back to where the pieces were. Have Pikmin harvest spicy berries, they go all the way to base and come right back. This feels like these sorts of tasks had the same issue and they solved it by having the Pikmin automatically return. It seems like they just missed another pressure point this could have been a relief for. In the absence of this, a gameplay style that sort of emerged while I was playing was I'd have only 2 captains running around doing the level for real, while one was being used as a kind of waiter, running back and forth between the base and the other 2 captains, providing them with the exact number of types of Pikmin they needed. Now don't get me wrong, this was a super fun way to play that I loved developing on my own, but I hated that it left me feeling guilty knowing that really all 3 captains should be doing level progression tasks at once for the best efficiency. And just saying, this isn't even a thought that I'd have ever had if it weren't for a pseudo time limit on my tail. Just saying. There's some other shitty side effects of the unchanged limit that you don't really realize until closer to the end game that only get worse the longer they linger. So, as their name suggests, Pikmin are picked out of the ground. Duh. But one of the mechanics is that the longer you leave them in the ground, the stronger they are when you finally pluck them. When you've already got 100 dudes out in the field though, the freaking onion thing stops spitting out seeds. So what happens at this point is you just lose the chance to level up your guys. Thus, when you inevitably start screwing up and losing Pictomen, your calls for backup are all super weak leaf level dudes who never were allowed to sit in the ground and grow stronger. It's dumb shit that feels like nobody really thought about. This is a slap on the ass, especially when you consider the point I've been restating for 4 videos already, that Pikmin are analogous to health, and that the less you have and the weaker they are, the less health you basically have. And I think it makes a lot of sense when you look at it that way here. What's happening is your health is being split in 3, right? But as those healths deplete and you go back to restock on more, the health you're getting back is less effective than that which you had. So it's like your health bar is emptying, but it's also shrinking. And that's a shit feeling to have constantly for the simple reason that the number of max Pikmin had not been increased to match the number of captains. But in this case, there's not much that can be done. There's no simple fix. An increase to the number of Pikmin would bring with it costs to graphics, to AI, to the number of enemies. Those extra Pikmin would have to come from somewhere, and as far as those other things go, I mean, visually we've already talked about it, this game makes me want to grocery shop, it's so beautiful. AI, it's the best it's ever been. Pikmin aren't clustered anymore, they're each their own agent, that's great. And enemies, holy crap does this game pump them out en masse when it wants to. But it's clear, given compromises like in-level loading screens, that the game isn't drawing all these frames and realizing all of these systems without a struggle. So while yeah, the low number of Pikmin gives me things to grumble about, it also gives me things to gush about. I want to make special note of this because it's not necessarily the game's fault that this happens. I think and I hope that someday the right hardware will be available as a stage for developers to fully realize the scale Pikmin is meant to have. But until then, yeesh, it's just taxing on a player to have to handle the shitty end of this stick. Now, this next bit, something I don't do often. I'm pretty bad at it in my opinion, and that should be pretty clear given how rough this segue is. In my opinion, Pikmin 1 and 2 are 2 of the best written games ever. I don't have the type of critical lens necessary to properly explain to you why. I don't know if maybe it's just an effect of expectations, of what's expected being exceedingly different than what's observed. I mean, after all, who would imagine that games about walking and talking fucking carrots would have some of the darkest undertones and tackle so openly themes as mature as existential dread and hopelessness? Pikmin 1 is literally a story about a man accepting his death. He goes through stages of panic, grief, of hope and relief and depression. And lest we forget, Pikmin 1 has multiple endings, so those themes aren't just sitting on top of the game trying to make a point separate from it, ludonarratively dissonant. No, they're part of the game. They're there to motivate you to play the levels efficiently. Olimar writing about his family in his journal every night and wondering if he'll ever see them again serve not one but two purposes in alignment with the game's dynamic endings. It's there to make you want to persevere, and if you win at the end, it gives you joy to see him finally break out of the planet's atmosphere. But if you lose, the reminder of how much was on the line for this guy makes you feel fucking terrible. Yeah, it might be presented in a way that's palatable to kids, but god damn, this is dark, dude. Pikmin 2 is the same sort of way, but without a strict time limit on that life support. Instead, the dangers came from the layers upon layers of natural and artificial caves Olimar and Louie needed to explore. One minute it's all lighthearted adventure and discovery, wonder, and amazement at the treasures found on this abandoned planet, and the next it's fucking cosmic horror. These guys are facing unspeakable alien monsters that sometimes they can put up an offensive against and kill, and sometimes they just fucking can't. Every item in the game has a set of long-winded descriptions written by Olimar upon discovery and by the AI on the ship as a sales pitch, each trying to understand what it is, what its uses may have been, and what it can tell them about the alien race that left them behind. We, the readers of these sometimes clueless but most often characterful messages, being members of that extinct alien race, humankind, kinda suggests some things though. I mean, this is a game meant to be played by humans, so ultimately the writing is done with us in mind. It seems to suggest that we reflect on our existence and the fragility of it. My read is the game is saying that no matter how hard you work and how much of an impact you try to have on your world, positive or negative, it's all a matter of perspective in the end. Someday, even if your traces have survived, the only others left to interpret them might not be able to understand at all. That's one of the saddest and most frustrating things about this fucking existence, that we try our best not to think too hard about by distracting ourselves with things like entertainment, like video games, like this one game, one of my favorites called Pikmin, which is about, you know it, walking and talking motherfucking carrot people. And I think it's really impressive that it, of all things, is telling you this. Like I said, I'm not the right person to talk about writing or themes or any of that bullshit, but look, I've played a lot of games. I've read, let's be honest, not many books since high school, and I've watched a fair few movies. This one's my favorite. And I might not be able to tell you exactly how they accomplish this or why they work, but I think about these two games a lot, and for more reasons than just their gameplay. And that's why it's such a major disappointment that Pikmin 3 is, such a major disappointment. I told you, I don't know my ass from my elbow when it comes to writing, holy shit. Pikmin 3's main theme, still something very weighty, is the overconsumption of natural resources. The reason I call it a disappointment, though, is that unlike the previous games which wholly embraced this shit, this one never takes it seriously. Part of the problem is that all of the great world building and subtext done in the prequels through flavorful descriptions and logs can't be done here, as text content has basically been reduced to nothing, comparatively at least. Instead, this time around, most of the writing is in the form of dialogue between the three captains, but seeing as how all of them are boring one-note losers, they don't really have interesting perspectives on their situations, they're not interesting to hear talk to each other. Look, 1 and 2, these games had barely any character interactions, but their world and characters were defined so well. Look, check this. Here's what I can tell you about Olimar. He's a curious explorer, he's a family man, he's smart and brutally honest, he's trustworthy and resourceful and empathetic, and yet he's not very courageous at face value, but rather it's his love for the people in his life and his morals that drive him to perform terribly dangerous acts. The president is, well, you guessed it, he's a greedy businessman type. He's dishonest to those around him, but ultimately he has hope and he's responsible, obligating himself to tasks when he knows it's necessary. And Louis, he's quiet, he's clumsy and lazy and selfish, and while that might lead you to believe he's your typical dumb cartoon character, he's not stupid, not by a long shot. It's unclear in each game he's in, but there's something mysterious going on with him. Now, Pikmin 3, keep in mind, these are three characters who converse with each other constantly. Here's what I've got. Alf is the ship's engineer. He's nerdy and awkward. He doesn't pick up on social cues sometimes. Brittany is a botanist. She's into plants and gross stuff. You know that one trope? She's passive, like go with the flow, sorta, maybe? I don't know. And Charlie, the captain, he's a meathead and a phony. He's all brawn, no brains. The joke is that he's the captain for the mission based on credentials and accomplishments that aren't completely true, and everyone else is more fit for their jobs than he is. Literally the only thing he does better than anyone else is fly the ship. That's all I've got. And what's more is that these guys don't reveal their traits slowly as the story progresses or have any sort of arcs at all. They're all true to their archetypes from the moment you meet them until the end. My point is, for the game to lean so heavily on them to expose its world and issues is a mistake given how uninteresting and bland they are. It of course doesn't help that what writing there isn't dark at all, falling short of the prequels once again. Even when the situation gets really dire, the writing sticks to that garbage, depthless Disney Channel kind of comedy. You know what I'm talking about. It's like the writing, for once, actually matches the presentation of the game. The expectation is met. It feels very much like it's geared towards a very young audience. And you know what? That would be fine if it weren't that the gameplay isn't anything a kid would like. I can't imagine a kid playing this, or at least myself as a kid. Given what I remember about being a kid from back when I was one, and the sorts of games I did enjoy, I can't imagine liking or wanting to play anything like this. Look, let's plot a triangle between gameplay, writing, and visuals. So long as two of these keep a more general and mature audience in mind, the game stays away from being a kid's game. The triangle isn't balanced in that direction, so it's fine. But this time, it goes too far and drops itself in that category, I think. And so what you're left with is a game that's way too complicated for kids, with a presentation and writing that's insulting to anyone else consuming it. Of course, it's not just the audience that the game's story screws over, but its own mechanics are impacted by it, in the sense that one, in particular, the new hybrid deadline system, is in dissonance with it. See, events that progress the story are all triggered by collecting special items from bosses, which eventually leads you to an item that lets you leave the planet and ends the game. Except what the story is supposed to be about is fruits. It's supposed to be about collecting all the fruits on the planet. So a speedrun, for instance, a perfectly executed fastest playthrough of the game's missions, would satisfy a different goal than its story. Completing the game as quickly as possible would be considered a mission failure. And I don't think that's a failure of the game's structure, but rather a failure of its story for not better writing in how the completion of the game actually works. And don't give me the multiple endings spiel. We both know that Pikmin 2 handled this exact sort of completion much better by hosting two endings to two different arcs linearly, one after the other. Fuck you and everything you stand for if you're gonna come at me with that weak shit. I mean, look, the story and game do such a bad job of shaking hands that I didn't even realize until the end of the game that this MacGuffin we were after was preventing us from leaving. They kept talking about it and how we needed to get it, but hell if I knew what for. I had no fucking clue the ship was damaged or anything. It looks all spick and span as far as I could tell. The whole time, the stakes were incredibly high, but nobody was reminding me of them, and I just wanted to pick up some more fruits. Let me frame it for you. These guys' home planet is starving, and we're trapped on an alien world with the last traces of food in the galaxy. But I don't care as much as when I was just one nobody guy in Pikmin 1 trying not to die over a space vacation gone wrong. And speaking of the ending, oof. Okay. So if there's anything you've heard about Pikmin 3 before this video, it's probably that the ending is an absolute shit show. I definitely had some memory of it going into this, but was still unprepared for what it actually was. The ending of Pikmin 3, in my opinion, is a perfect encapsulation of everything I think is wrong with this game. It is a masterclass in misunderstanding everything that worked about Pikmin II. But when it comes down to it, it might not actually be that bad. I'd reason the sort of person who didn't like Pikmin 2 would take no issue with this ending. It'd be a fair way to show you to the aisle once the show's over. And I completely understand that. But ultimately, I don't hold that opinion, and this is my video, so all the shit that's about to fly out of my mouth at whirlwind speeds is going to be coming from whatever place deep down in my gut I've stored my love for the second Pikmin game. Please keep that in mind here, because yeah, this is really tricky stuff to touch, and I've been really nervous to touch it. It's why I've kept it for the last. That and the fact that it's the ending of the game and all, but So here's how the ending plays out. You get to the big oak tree where it turns out Olimar is laying unresponsive in life support, but weirdly obsessed with him is this strange little gold goop monster. So you pick up his body, and the game explains to you that since there's no direct route back to base for the Pikmin to carry him along, they'll instead follow one designated captain of the three while you journey further into a cave. As soon as you enter, the goop monster returns, but now it's an enormous blob and it's chasing you. So the challenge of the final area of the game is to use 2 captains to solve puzzles and clear rooms and build bridges and other paths, while the third is constantly being chased by a monster that is obsessively determined to take back Olimar's body. Of course, the time limit is still on, so if the day timer goes out, all the actions done in the cave are saved, and the player can, starting from the beginning, pick up Olimar again and get back to where they left off the next day. After what's likely to be a few days worth of this multitasking chase, you make it out of the cave back to the base of the tree. Here, you duke it out with the goop monster one last time through a battle that requires you to use each of the 5 Pikmin types at different points. And finally, once defeated, Olimar is woken up, he gives you the MacGuffin, and you blast off to the credits. Now, this might seem like a weird time to specifically draw attention to this again, but you may have noticed that while this series has 3 games in it, this is my 4th video on them. How's that? Well, Pikmin 2 features one stroke of genius level that I felt deserved its own standalone piece and didn't want to have muddy up the rest of that game's video. Or at least, that's what I may have said. Now, I also made that video separate in anticipation of what would come here. Understanding the Submerged Castle is very important when it comes to receiving Pikmin 3's ending. See, it's rarer than rare for one single moment of a game, or any piece of media really, to either make it or break it. And like I said, from a certain point of view or in isolation, the ending of Pikmin 3 doesn't do either. It's passable, acceptable. While not being all that exciting, it still challenges you and tests you like no other level. Sure, that's good enough. But given the background, given where it comes from, or rather what came before it, it's with this knowledge that the ending's execution becomes so deplorable. Here's why. Pikmin 3's ending is just a terrible ripoff of a single level from its prequel. Now here's a little recap of the Submerged Castle from Pikmin 2. Before even entering the dungeon, you know something's up. It's the only cave level in the game whose entrance is below the water level, making it so that only one type of Pikmin can be brought in. But unexpectedly, the level's listed elemental requirements include all types, so entry to this stage is already being framed as something special, something unique and challenging, something very mysterious. Then it begins easily enough, it's your typical treasure hunting fare, until a few levels in when the final boss of the dungeon stops by for an early visit. The Water Wraith is explained to be some sort of extra-dimensional being, but as far as you're concerned, he's threatening enough simply by being impervious to damage, for his speed and unpredictability, and for his ruthless one-hit steamroll attack that can absolutely devastate you in the blink of an eye. It's unique for being the only final boss, let alone enemy, that antagonizes you throughout an entire dungeon, rather than only on its final sublevel. And so far, everything about this dungeon seems to be about setting it apart from the rest. Unlike the others where you can kind of adapt any playstyle to him, this one leaves you entirely defenseless in the open air, and it's utterly terrifying. So instead, you're forced to use narrow pipes in the walls for your escapes and wait until the Wraith gives up and clears the room. You feel like a mouse in a house that doesn't belong to you. You're an intruder, and sooner or later, its rightful owner is gonna find you and fucking crush you. The poor visibility and the Wraith's random traversal AI make a great pair when it comes to the sort of hide-and-seek this dungeon puts you through. When out of its sight, the Wraith will wander around the level unpredictably to the point that it can no longer be seen or heard. It's then, when the coast is clear, that you can come out and try to continue working on the level. You still have to keep your guard up though, because at any moment he can emerge from the darkness and force you back into hiding. Only at the end are you given the chance to turn the tables on him, and after the fight, that's it. It's a fantastic level that was unique within its game and only worked for that exact reason, and because, as the game had no time limit, it could be as hard as it wanted to be given that you had technically unlimited attempts. Now, the formidable Oak, the final level of Pikmin 3, as I mentioned, is kind of a ripoff of the Submerged Castle. On paper, it includes everything its predecessor had, but in an effort to adapt it to a game that it couldn't fairly fit in its current state, it makes changes for the worse that transform it from something absolutely fantastic to a total goddamn joke. First of all, there's no mystery, there's no big reveal, there's no challenging suggestion, there's none of that. Before even entering the level, you've seen the creature called the Plasm Wraith, who's going to be harassing you while inside. Then, literally as soon as you enter, he appears and starts making chase. There's no rug pulled out from under you, which for the submerged castle was half of it. Going in, you had no idea what lay inside, but you had just enough information to know that you were unprepared. So when it was revealed exactly what you'd be dealing with, and you still had uncertainty about it, that was the moment you'd begin to shit your pants, the tension was so great. Here, though, there's none of that. It's like they hand you a rough blueprint of the level's design before you even walk into it, and what's worse is that once you're in, they just hand you the rest of the details. Once you're in and Goldilocks is chugging along after you, the game reveals its behavior to you entirely. It lays out for you exactly the set of coded rules that control the Wraith and suggests exactly how to nullify it. The information they give you goes beyond the point of making the final boss predictable, to revealing that instead, it's controllable. So, the Wraith follows Olimar's body in a straight line, very slowly, and Olimar's body follows one of your captains at a speed variable depending on the number of Pikmin carrying him, but easily faster than the Wraith. So in essence, you're directing the Wraith with your captain. Further, the Wraith's position is always visible to the player via the map on the gamepad screen. It shows up as a big green dot. And even with all this information about the current state and rules of the level, if the player still manages to screw up and let it get too close to them, the captain will issue a generously timed warning notification letting you know they should be moved someplace safer. Knowing exactly how it works doesn't just allow you to, but it basically demands that you totally cheese the Wraith's behavior for the entire level, by leading it in circles endlessly once you've cleared a loop. The final segment of this game boils down to moving one captain far from the Wraith, doing some general level progression tasks with the other two captains until you get a notification, and then directing that first captain to autopilot themselves somewhere new, going back to work with the other two. It's this over and over again. Changing the Wraith from something that behaves randomly and moves quicker than your Pikmin to something whose paths are just a retreading of yours turns a uniquely terrifying and tense game of cat and mouse into just an annoyance. The Wraith has been reduced from an enemy to a crank that you've got to wind back up every half a minute or so whenever it warns you. Basically what I'm saying is that the Wraith from Pikmin 2 is a lot like Mr. X from Resident Evil 2. It's invincible, it searches for you, it can be alerted to your presence and hunt after you, and ultimately it makes you rethink navigation throughout a maze-like level. And the Wraith from Pikmin 3 is more like a Shadow Mario from whatever Mario game. It's just you, but with a few seconds of lag. It retraces your steps, your jumps, and all other actions. It's basically just you control it. There's nothing to this, it's not scary or engaging at all, it's just a system that you're asked to be in charge of, and given all the information and tools necessary to be. It's completely opposite to the feeling I got playing the Submerged Castle in Pikmin 2, which, may I remind you, is not the last level of a game and is not trying to be the final climactic chase sequence. It's just a one-off break to the formula that can be done whenever and never happens again. For a long time, I couldn't really describe why, but I can identify that Pikmin 3's ending was just a totally mangled, shitty, crap version of a single level from its prequel. And in my opinion, that was enough to write it off as a bad sequel and a bad game. Okay, I'm not that much of a hard ass, it also reinstates a time limit system that I didn't like and removed the unique real-world item treasure hunting that I found so intrinsically motivating and charming too, so it was less of an instant write-off and more of a slowly growing disrespect for it, but anyways. It wasn't until fellow YouTube video boy Chariot Rider's video on how games create tension and some research that it drove me to do that I really understood why I read the ending of Pikmin 3 the way I did. In his video, he practically gives a formula or a recipe for how tension can be made in a game, and the more he described it in contrast to the methods of removing tension, the more I realized he was basically describing exactly why the Submerged Castle works, and exactly why the Formidable Oak doesn't. God bless this man for uploading this video when he did, or I would not have reached this thesis. And the reason the Oak doesn't work, that's because while Pikmin 2, and in particular that one level, are extraordinarily good at managing tension, Pikmin 3, and in particular that one level, remove and add just the right sets of features to, rather than eliminate that tension entirely, turn it into something else. Something that has a name. Something called stress. Judging this series and this game now through the lens of tension versus stress has given me a whole different way to talk about it, think about it, and reason about it. Major thanks to Chariot Rider again for helping me understand why I love one of my favorite games so much, and why I'm so disappointed in its follow-up. If y'all don't mind, definitely check the man out. If you do, tell him Dad sent you. The joke is that I'm not his dad. So let's talk about what makes tension and stress different beasts. In the context of video games, which is what we've all gathered here today for, tension is a sort of pressure that can be managed by the game, whereas stress is more of a personal feeling that the game may induce, but it can't really control or stop without plain turning itself off. Stress is an anxiety you have to deal with personally, while tension is an attribute, a property of a game's state almost, that can be cranked up and down by the level designers. One way to look at this, if I've got this right, is that players of equal skill levels should experience the same tension when playing the same part of the same game. However, the stress they feel, or whether or not they feel any at all, is entirely personal. It comes from what makes them, as individuals, fearful and anxious. Now, it should go without saying that the average person finds multitasking to be stressful and fatiguing. I am certainly one of those people. I prefer more to plan things properly and to get them done ahead of time than to be overwhelmed all at once under time pressure I didn't ask for. This exact environment causes me some real mental strain when playing the game that Pikmin 3 asks me to play. It's an environment that's caused me real mental strain in the past in real life at my first software development job that I quit, partly as a result of that. So for a video game, a piece of entertainment you pay money for, to elicit the same feelings as the toll of a job's final weeks, that seems like the wrong direction to be going. It's like the joke goes, in only 2 weeks of development you can save yourself 2 hours of planning. Or worst case, 3 months of finding a replacement, you know? Look, it's not that I can't handle pressure, it's just that I get upset when nobody makes the appropriate effort to mitigate it, and this allows me from trying also. Some people love working under pressure, and you know what? I'm sure those sorts of folks would love Pikmin 3. Where am I going with this? I don't fucking know. Having 2 captains but only 1 playable at a time, that's tension. It causes you to play cautiously and sparingly. That tension, it becomes relieved once you've methodically cleared a level of a dungeon or an area in the overworld. It's tense because there's uncertainty about your safety as you can only control 1 captain at a time. Dropping off one in order to control the other is a gamble every time. And the game bites you in the ass enough times with unexpected traps to make you question everything. Having 3 captains, or should I say, craptins, that you're asked to control and manage simultaneously in parallel though, that's different. It's not tense, it's a stress. It's a lot, it's painful, it's annoying, and aside from just becoming more familiar with the system as time goes on through practice, it's a stress that never gets relieved. You don't get to enter and re-emerge from places that apply the stress like in the second game. It's always there, it never goes away, you have to deal with it yourself, personally. You're constantly switching captains, touching the touchscreen, plotting paths, counting Pikmin, switching captains, plotting new paths, you're just always on. You never have a moment to just stop, take in your surroundings, and recalibrate. And if anything, it all gets worse and worse as the game's overworld gets more demanding and starts handing you more and more types of Pikmin, but doesn't give you more space to hold them. Christ, I'll give it that. Pikmin 2 may have been poisonous in terms of, well, relying heavily on poisonous Pikmin that you couldn't acquire normally, but at least having such a low population of them meant you didn't have these sorts of stresses hitting you. Having a hard 30-day time limit? That's tension. It's something you can see, something you have some information about, something that gets exciting and tighter as it ticks down and you press on to get all the pieces of the ship in time. The timer is something that comes in and out of relevance as you discover new areas and new items. Similarly, having dungeons with unlimited time but limited numbers of Pikmin, that's tense too, in the exact opposite way. Tension is kind of like a question being asked that you can't completely answer, but you can think about. The time limit asks, how much can you get done in only a certain amount of time only? A dungeon asks, how much can you get done with a certain amount of Pikmin only? There's so much uncertainty about what lies below, what sorts of enemies will be present, what sorts of traps will be laid out, how the rooms will be procedurally plotted, which Pikmin types will be needed for which puzzles, how many sub-levels there will be, what the boss enemy at the end will be, whether or not there's a surprise mini-boss lurking in wait, what sorts of items will be gathered. Woof. The only things you know for certain are how many Pikmin you've started with, and that you can't get more while inside. That's it. This is a tension that gets cranked higher and higher the further you go, and the more Pikmin you lose, the more you question whether or not you'll have enough to continue on, and then bang, it's all released in one shot at the end of a final boss fight. It's cathartic. You reset up the water chute back to the overworld from 100 back to 0 tension. It's a phenomenon. Reinstating a time limit, but putting you in charge of it, though? That's stressful. The question is now, how much can you do in how much time? The question becomes two, and it's circularly dependent on its own answer, which you have to give. The game is asking you a question that forces you to ask yourself a question. Even though technically an average player should be able to quickly build up a buffer of over 30 days by the halfway point, it's the fact that you are now directly responsible for managing your own time limit rather than it just being a big clock up on the wall. It's that difference in execution that makes you perceive it and receive it differently. In the first game, the uncertainty lied in how long it would take to gather all the ship parts and if that amount of time was less than, equal to, or greater than 30 days. In this game, there is no uncertainty, no tension being wound by the game. The clock isn't a clock. It's a shelf full of juice. You drink 1 bottle of juice a day. How does the juice get on the shelf? It gets there when you collect fruits and turn them to juice. You are the root of the issue, and although it's functionally the same as a timer ticking down, increasing the juice buffer is your responsibility. It's a lot to think about, to have on your mind at all time, and it's stressful. And now, with this new way of reasoning about the game, holy hell does the ending come out terrible. Like we said, the Submerged Castle, just like every other dungeon in the second game, manages tension by slowly cranking it to the max all the way until the end. First you enter knowingly unprepared. That's a crank. Then the Wraith appears. That's a crank. You observe that his behavior is random. That means that even when he's left a room, the tension lingers as he can return any second without warning. In fact, it's even more tense because at least when he's in the same room as you can keep an eye on him. But when he's gone, you know that the feeling of safety you're convincing yourself of is fake. When he's not in the same room as you, he can be anywhere. That's uncertainty with limited details. That's tension. Eventually you learn about how to take over control of Bulbmin enemies. That's a bit of relief, but uh-oh, now here's a level with no clear hiding spaces, and a level with bombs, and a level with traps. That's scary. And so on and so forth. Until of course you get to the end, the game finally reveals to you how to make the Wraith vulnerable, but also lets you know that defeating it won't be a cakewalk, and that if you screw up, you can get yourself deadlocked. The tension is cranked to the max now, until finally, boom! The Wraith is made completely vulnerable and the tension is released as the cat becomes the mouse, and you throw everything you've got at him for a swift victory. Revenge for antagonizing you the whole time. The scales are rebalanced. The tension is relieved. Formidable Oak, on the other hand, eliminates all uncertainty by showing you the Wraith's exact position at all times, removing the randomness in its behavior and explaining exactly how it traverses the cavern, to the point that it effectively asks you to just manage the final boss yourself. And manage in a sense that you literally have control over it. You guide it, you take it for a walk, you lead it around. It never leaves the room, it never changes the formula, and even if it did, it wouldn't matter because you've got a big green dot on your map letting you know where it is. This is a stress. It's just another thing you're asked to be on top of that isn't a real threat. This has tension from its uncertainty. There are questions to be asked about how this guy works, and you may not be able to answer them. This doesn't have tension and only leaves you with the stress of controlling yourself and your own challenger at the same time, like a snake having to worry about its own tail. It's like, you're gonna hate me for this, but it's like when you're reminded to think, to breathe. Normally it's something that, yeah, sure, if you don't do it, you'll die, but it's so easy that there's no real threat. But when you're reminded of it, it's just something else to worry about, just something else to multitask. It's nothing special. So, because no tension exists throughout this entire encounter, because there's so much information provided to you that there's left not a single question anyone could ask you about the game's state that you couldn't answer, no tension is relieved by beating the final boss at the end of the road, or the base of the tree, I should say. You're not invested in this shit enough, and the game seems to know that, putting your Pikmin base walking distance from the neatly cut out arena so that you can just leave in the middle of the fight to restock and come back, basically removing all challenge. They straight put an unlimited health supply right next to the boss fight. Holy hell, man. And then you beat it, again, feeling zero relief from zero tension that was never developed. And boom, within like a minute you're watching the credits. It feels weirdly rushed. Not that you need a second to catch your breath, seeing as how all of this has just been personally stressful garbage you're trying to get out of the way, but it's weird how quickly the game ushers you out and how impactless it all feels. It's like, yep, here's the ending, bye! Pikmin 3 inherits all of these great systems and ideas from the previous game, but in execution, by overloading the player with information and details, things to keep track of and control and manage, it shows that it doesn't understand that what made Pikmin 2 work was all the information you didn't have. The nail in the coffin for me on this point was the mission mode I mentioned before. Finding this after having experienced the ending of the game proved to me how little it understood the shoulders it was standing on. So by the way, sorry for only recording one level of a mode I literally couldn't stand after 2 whole days of doing nothing but playing and recording gigabytes of footage of this fucking game. Fucking sue me, you're gonna be watching the same level the whole time I spiel on about this. The missions are split down into 3 types. Find treasures, fight enemies, and boss fights. So what are we gonna do? You guessed it, we're gonna bring back Pikmin 2. In this game, the dungeons were all 3 of these things at once. In Pikmin 2, finding treasures, fighting enemies, and defeating bosses were sub-goals of a single level's completion. They weren't so segregated. In fact, they were intertwined. Separating them all from one another in this game, each one it becomes void of tension because only together do they really ask the player any sorts of questions. Treasure hunting is only tense when sleeping enemies block the path. Fighting enemies is only tense because if you perform poorly and lose too many Pikmin, you may not have enough left to be able to carry treasures. And of course, boss fights, the ultimate conclusions to each level, are only tense because prior to entering the final sublayer, the player has already been smashed and passed through an intense gauntlet of that aforementioned treasure hunting and enemy fighting. And if they fail here, they'll have to restart the whole thing. Pikmin 3, why would I fight the monsters unless there were treasures behind them? Why would I be interested in collecting treasures if I'm doing it in an otherwise empty world? And how could defeating a boss feel rewarding if I'm able to skip all of the challenges that precede them? Guys, they took 3 different parts of what was originally a survival mode, made them each their own mission type, and finally slapped a timer on them all to call it a day. It completely misses the challenge of Pikmin 2's dungeons. Like everything else in this game, the framework is there, it's just what's built inside of it that's no good. And then, of all the fucking things to decide to monetize, make some of their first-party paid DLC on their new online shop service, they chose these. The verdict? Look, I won't tell you not to buy Pikmin 3. It sits atop the stack of the Pikmin series, for better or for worse. What I will tell you is not to buy these mission levels. This makes no sense. That's all. Pikmin is a series I hold very close to my heart. A friend of mine recommended me the remake of the first game on the Wii in high school, and I fell in love with its gameplay and unique approach to telling an unexpected story. Then Pikmin 2 for the Wii, that was harder to track down a copy of for me, but eventually I did, and my on and off playthrough of it lasted me about a quarter of a year in college. I never even beat the game after all that time, only finally doing it years later for the video, and even at that, technically I didn't finish it because I completed the last dungeon and the final boss with 1 too little Pikmin to carry the last 4 treasures in the game. my playthroughs of these are something I cherish, something I remember. Pikmin 3, with seemingly so much purpose, celebrates what are, in my opinion, the weakest parts of both its prequels in the vein of progress, while simultaneously going out of its way to demonstrate the capabilities and uses of a new console gimmick and mode of interaction and display that, in my opinion, are a detriment to the game. In other words, it's trying to evolve in what I think is the wrong direction, while it's also trying to showcase a fancy new secondary display built for overwhelming a user with additional information and a sense of omnipresence, in a game that in my opinion works best when you don't have all the answers. Where do things go from here? Well, a fourth Pikmin game, not the shitty DS one, has been confirmed to have been in development for quite a few years, even rumored to have been close to a release once. I can only imagine that the story for that game will mirror this one, and I can only hope that all this delay is not just for the sake of porting the game to the new hot console on the block, but also is the result of some sort of retrospective, a post-mortem like they did for the last games. Selfishly, I hope that a fourth Pikmin game steers clear of the third, and given how some of the other popular Nintendo IPs have had their design modified to better suit the hybrid home and portable console that is the Switch, it only makes sense to me that it would have to. Look, maybe this is a little bit personal, and I don't know if this is something I should really end this video on, but I always felt that media-related tattoos were kind of fucking dumb. But then I worked for over a year in media and entertainment, and a lot of the people I met had made that commitment. They wore their fandoms on their sleeves, and their arms, and their thighs. And so I realized that being so invested in entertainment as many of us are, you know, people who make and watch sometimes hour-long videos about video games on the internet, it's not just about fandom of individual things, you know? It's kind of a lifestyle. And so that's what marking yourself with anything like that is really about. And so I've thought for a long time about, you know, if I were to get some media-related tattoo on my ass or something, a pretty big canvas, but if I were, what would it be? I've had falling outs with a lot of the entertainment I used to like when I was a kid. I used to love Metal Gear Solid, but now I've almost come to disrespect it. I have completely different views on some of those games than I used to have. Maybe Splatoon? I mean, I like it a lot, but I was in university when it came out. You know, it wasn't part of my formative years. Fuck, I used to be super into metal in high school, and now I literally just listen to fucking SoundCloud mashups. Like, what the fuck? And then I realized that Pikmin is kind of the last thing, like, that I've got. I loved, and still do love, the first and second games, and you know what, I can forgive the third game for being a pile of shit. It was on a weird console. So right now, whether or not I get a little spaceship drawn flying out of my lopsided ass crack is dependent on how that fourth game turns out. One rotten egg in the series I can put up with, but if we got two, nah man. In conclusion, my name has been LambHoot, and I certainly hope you shove a carrot right up where you poop. Thanks for watching. Hello again. Right before I cut to the usual end screen bit, I need to make a special announcement. You see, in between the start of production of this video and, you know, like actually finishing it now, something happened that I need to discuss. Some friends and I have gotten together, and in partnership, we've kind of, well, in partnership, basically VG kind of did most of it, you know, but anyways. Long story short, we have launched a sort of goofy freaking website. I guess it's kind of, there's a content side to it and there's a forum. I've never really participated in a web forum before, but I don't know, I kind of have for this one, and it's pretty dope. But anyways, it's called last-life.net, and you can check it out right now. We post all of our content there. You can discuss it. There are different boards for different topics, and so far it's a lot of fun. I think my favorite thing about it is that it kind of reveals maybe an unintentionally well-kept secret that we've had for a long time, which is that a lot of the people you may or may not watch online who make similar content, you know, these like video essays about video games and stuff, a lot of us kind of know each other and have known each other, and we've regularly spoken to each other and met with each other on various occasions. Like, you know, a lot of the people you watch are probably already friends, and this, I think what excites me most about this is that it kind of reveals to a lot of people that, like, yeah, we all know each other. Like, that's, so far out of all the reactions to this, that's kind of my favorite. So, I don't know, that just really excites me. Anyways, hope you guys give it a check out. I'm going to be posting content there, obviously, and I'll be active in those forums. It's going to be a good time. So, yeah, now I'm going to cut to my regular end screen pre all of this. Alright, see you guys. Hello everybody, and welcome to the end screen. I haven't done that in a while. I can't scream anymore in my new apartment. I still feel like end screens aren't really, like, they don't work with... I've definitely evolved a lot over the past little while. I still like doing the end screens, but I think the thing that's killing them the most is the fact that now I caption my videos, and the rest of it, most of my video is scripted, so it's really easy to just do a final polish pass and make sure that everything's good. But the end screen, I have to take this, I have to play it at a quarter time speed, and I have to write as it's playing. I hate my... Like, I'm doing this right now as I'm editing this video, I know, and I'm hating myself in the past and the future. It's complicated. But yes, here we are, joining you from my bathroom studio where I record all of my videos, because, hey, they're all shit. First order of business, I just want to fucking not look like a fat ass, but, first order of business, just want to, again, give a shout-out, please, send some attention, some love to my boy, Chariot Rider, who has straight up been dropping some of the hottest videos recently, and it was really, like, I don't know, man, it's like, I feel like I watch a lot of people who make videos about video games and stuff, and a lot of times I watch a video and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to watch this. I watch it and I'm like, I don't even remember anything they said. Maybe, like, the fault is on me for being a crappy audience member and I have a lot I'm thinking about, but I don't know, man, like, so there's something about this guy. He can just, like, I was listening to him at work in the background, and he started talking, and I was getting distracted from what I was working. I was like, okay, I need to stop, I need to watch this over lunch. And then I did, and I was like, oh my god, and he got me out of this rut I was having writing the Pikmin video. It was really kind of amazing. I'm gonna turn the microphone. Anyways, yeah, so please send him some good vibes. Go check out his video about tension. I highly recommend. I don't know if he has anything newer. By the time this comes out, he probably does, but definitely recommend that. Also, I didn't know if I wanted to do this in the beginning of the video or not, but I had alredy had some disclaimers. I kind of wanted to do a little bit of a hello, maybe make this an opportunity to say, first of all, thank you to, well, how do I want to do this? Okay, here's what I want to do. I want to get two things out of the way. I want to make an addressing, and I want to do a thank, but I don't know which order, so I'm going to address first. Hello, everybody. There are many more people who may be watching this video or not. I'm not really sure yet. It's not out. But I am aware that there are many more of you. Welcome. This is typically the sort of thing I do. I do a long video, and then I do this little end screen at the end where, you know, I get out some updates or some whatever. People seem to like it, I guess. And this is where I can do, you know, special things that I can't really get out in a regular video, like thank my dad, who clearly watched one of my videos for once and then directed a bunch of people to me, because I don't know, I started getting a ton of comments saying, your dad sent you. I was like, wow. I called my dad. I was like, hey. Turned out it wasn't him. Turned out it was my real dad. Hamish Black. I actually don't really know what to say, because the thing is, and this is how fucking stupid I look. I have the biggest fucking smile on my face, but, like, I don't know. The thing about this last time that Hamish gave some shout outs again, and I appeared in this list, is that for some reason it drove people to come check out my thing, but also a lot of people started, like, actually watching my videos, and I don't know, and a lot of the attention I got for once was not, because for some reason it always balances out. Like, as soon as I start getting attention in one sector, the SpongeBob stuff starts kicking up. But what I've noticed recently is that my SpongeBob videos are actually getting less attention, and my more recent things, like especially my Metal Gear Solid video, a few years old now, but my Five Nights at Freddy's video, and my Metal Gear Solid 5, did I say 5 before? I meant Peace Walker, but I have, like, real videos about real Pikmin 2 for some reason is like I mean, blowing up on at my scale, but, like, people are listening to what I have to say about them, and they're discussing, and I'm getting comments, and I'm getting attention. I don't know, man. Look, like I said in that video, man, Hamish is like truck picking up these leaves, but the thing is, it's maybe the mistake I made is that it's not just leaves he's dropping on. Like, he's really, like, he has this inner circle, you know, and he opens it up and he's like, hello, join it, and he engulfs you, and then he's not just piling leaves on top of you. I don't know, I've been given a lot of hope recently. Let's just leave it at that. I have some other stuff I want to talk about today. Thank you, Hamish. God damn it. Oh, so here's something I was thinking about. I've been thinking about it for this week. I don't know. I might sleep over the weekend and then not even think this is a cool idea anymore. But over the holidays, I have this old Raspberry Pi. I did one little project with it, and then I just kind of threw it in a drawer and never did anything else with it. And then I have this AI bot that some of you guys may have remembered from the old Discord server and Twitter, named Ace Nickelback, who posts some fire fucking takes. And I was thinking, what'd be great is finally put Ace Nickelback on my Raspberry Pi instead of having him on the laptop that is sitting on the toilet. Let me show you, by the way. Okay, I can't show you. Well, you know what, I tried. But I thought that'd be a cool idea, and then I thought over the holidays, because I'll have a week off from work, I should do that. So I ordered a new keyboard for my Raspberry Pi, I ordered a mouse, and I was like, I'm gonna do some crazy stuff. Then the holidays came and went, and I got really, really busy, and I was like, wow, that sucks. And in school, I always found time. I mean, in school, I mostly didn't make too many videos, but I had a lot of fun chances to do little fun programming projects on the side, like Ace Nickelback, for instance. And now that I'm working full time, yeah, I program at work all the time, and then I come home and I make videos. But sometimes I have an idea for something a little bit technical, and I want to do it. Like last Christmas, I wanted to make I wanted to just make a game in Unity, or like not even a game, but just a system in Unity where you had sprites from different angles, and depending on your rotation around an object of that type, it would load the correct sprite. Basically, like literally how I use the Mario Kart sprites, but how it works in like Mario Kart 64 when you travel around a character, like different sprites load for the different angles of the car. And I just rebuilt that. I had sprites of Mario in a cart, and I was sitting in bed one day and I was like, I want to do this, and I spent a day and I did it, and like that was so much fun. But these days I feel like if I'm not at work and I'm not spending time working on a video, I'm wasting my time, and I feel like that kind of sucks, because I want to share a lot of myself because I mean, from time to time I'll stream, right, and it's always a good time. So anyways, all that to say, what I thought about today was that recently, one of my projects I've thought about, because I don't think it's going to be so easy to put Ace on the Pi, but what I was thinking is I think I would like to rebuild Ace Nickelback from scratch in Java. It's currently in C#. And I'm thinking what I might do, might be a little bit complicated, but what I might try to do is maybe, because ultimately when I do live stream, I stop playing the game. We end up just talking. Chat is going wild, but we have a conversation and everybody just starts talking, and I end up just talking the whole time. So I was thinking I could do something, less active and talk and do stuff at the same time. So I was thinking of maybe semi-regularly streaming while I reprogram Ace Nickelback in Java. I don't know if that's interesting to anybody. Basically, the idea is I would just turn on my screen and start coding and just play around, probably have the old project versus the new project, and slowly but surely hopefully rebuild him and then see what I want to do with him. And then, of course, have, you guys around if you like. It might be pretty boring, but I don't know. Tell me what you think. Is that something that would interest you guys? I've thought before about doing little programming tutorials, but I think those would take too much time. But I think this is a better way to do it, to live stream it and maybe just have some fun. I don't know if that's something that interests you. If you're someone who is of a programming computer science background and that's interesting, let me know. And if you're not, give me that perspective too. If you've never really thought about this stuff, you're not really into programming or software or anything, what do you think of something like that? Would you stick around for that? Let me know. I'm just throwing ideas at these four walls. That's the saddest thing about becoming an adult, because the other thing I wanted to do last year I told myself last year was going to be the year I got back into reading. I got one book. I started it a few weeks ago. I started it before the year was over, but just a few days before New Year's. There's a book on Greek mythology. I was all and it was before God of Evil War came out, so don't even fucking start with this shit. But it was I was just you know what, I'd like to read a little bit about this because part of this is my heritage. To be fair, I started taking Greek courses on Saturdays, so that kind of took some of the time that maybe I would have spent reading, but languages are hard. But so I mean, okay, you know what, I can't really blame myself, because basically what I was on this heritage searching journey, and I bought a book because I thought I was going to read it, and then instead of reading it, I ended up taking courses which are probably show a bigger commitment. So maybe the way I'm looking at myself like I'm an idiot who couldn't commit to doing something, but really I committed to something else that was more valuable. So basically I made the right decision. So I don't know, maybe I'm proud of myself, I guess. I'll give myself some credit. Slap on the back. That wasn't a slap on the back, that was my shoulder. It's because this shirt is too tight. Ow! I can clap with one hand. Have you ever seen this? Have I ever shown this? Look at this. I can even do it with two hands. I know you're impressed. Listen, I know what you're thinking, Hamish. I know what you're thinking. Sadly, I'm taken to the jail because I'm a criminal. What a fucking... So yeah, Pikmin 3, that was it. That was the end of this series that I started, many times ago. Hey, what comes around goes around. There's gonna be sources in the description. There's a couple of... I actually, you know what? Fuck you guys. I actually read quite a bit about tension and stress. I might be... There are certain readings I did that kind of equated them, but there were other readings I did that did specify a difference between them. So anyways, I cited a couple of things in the description, nothing super crazy, but yeah, no, Chariot Man really gave me a run for my chariots. So I guess at this point I am going to awkwardly cut to some footage of something else while I read off the names of my very generous patrons who have... How do I want to frame it this week? Who have not afforded me, because I'd do it anyways, but who have validated my whatever I don't know, you guys. I do something really stupid and really nerdy, and most people in my personal life don't really understand it. Most of the people I know in my personal life do not follow with it. Very dissimilar to what I've heard from friends and other people I know. Well, I mean friends, like friends online who do this sort of stuff and whose families are really on top of what they do. Nobody really in my life really follows that. Maybe a few friends, but most people don't really know what I do. So maybe from your perspective, maybe I give off this allure of some sort of person who looks like they know what they're doing. But as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I feel it personally in my life, nobody really understands it. So I don't really see it the same way maybe a lot of other people do. But you guys offer me that sort of validation that I don't get from anywhere else. And for that, I thank you. And now I'm going to read your names. But before I read your names, I tweeted a few days ago, if I did a fucking stupid tweet, but I was like, what if I did a cover of Ocean Man? Who would give a shit, right? And everybody was like, wah, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so here's the thing. I forgot about this. One of my Patreon goals is actually that I would do a cover of a song. And, okay, so just before this started, I logged into Patreon so I could get the names and everything. But I modified my goals. So my goals were a little bit crazy. I had like one at every $100 level. A little bit stupid, but... so I modified the singing goal to be less money, obviously, but also to specifically be I will not just do any song. I will do a cover of Ocean Man. Guys, Ocean Man, can you feel it through the wonder of amazement like the water man? Anyways, all that to say, I'll do that. I'll do it. Anyways, without further ado, you guys are Austin Green, Cosmic Crown. Why am I sounding like an idiot? Disgruntled. I'm still doing it. Disgruntled Mushroom, Ari, the Final Blue Man, Glenn Strawn, Grant Whalen. Oh baby, yeah. The Hat Wearing Gamer, Isaac Holland, Ivan Martinez. Oh, they're in alphabetical order this time. I never figured out how to do that. Oh wow. Just Wally. I asked you last time if you wanted me to call you Just Wally or if your name is Just Wally. I don't think you answered. But anyways, Matthew Steven, Nathan Walker, Tito's, Vin Jock, and of course the man who takes his shirt off sometimes and has Hamish Black written on is Zach Frazier, and that's everybody. I realized that may have been too loud and I may have clipped through my mic a few times. If I did, I don't give a fuck. Thank you guys again for supporting. If you would like to support this sort of fucking bullshit that I do, please feel free to check out the Patreon page. Every dollar makes me look at my phone as it buzzes while I'm at work and have a big smile, and then put it down and then unpause the Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze full soundtrack and then continue programming, because that's all I do anymore. That's my whole life, is I just listen to the Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze soundtrack and I program. But otherwise, if you'd like to support me in any sort of way, or that maybe you get a little bit of something back, you can always check out my Spreadshirt, which may I remind you, now that there's so many people here, I made a big deal out of it a long time ago, and some people know that I take it very, very seriously. But my Spreadshirt, and to a lesser extent my Redbubble, basically every single video I release, I then design a shirt based off that video, and I drop it as obviously some joke about the video or something. My Pikmin shirt, let me just tell you, is legendary. I should have worn it. Fuck. But this video shirt, listen, it's not, this is the way I do it. It's not designed yet. At some point, a few days maybe after this, once I've recovered and I've slept a little bit after editing, I'm going to be dropping the shirt. I'll post a tweet about it. Who knows what. But anyways, you can check out last video's shirt, which is a joke about the pressure cooker with the applesauce. Honestly, it's one of my worst shirts. It's pretty ugly. But I got better ones, so check it out if you like. There's tons of great shirts that I actually put a lot of work into myself. I really enjoy it. But anyways, if you'd like to wear a cool shirt, definitely check that out. And otherwise, I mean, honestly, just writing a comment makes me feel really good because it shows that people are actually listening to what I'm saying, which is, you know, something for me personally has always been a struggle because a lot of the sorts of videos that I do make that get a lot of attention do not get attention from the sorts of people who actually listen to what I have to say. All that being said, I'm going to stop shitting all over SpongeBob because what's-his-face died. I should probably stop. He left me with this, man. He fucking left me with this. Anyways, all that being said, this is probably the longest video I've ever made. I love you, and I'll see you... Why did I keep saying that? Look, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna fucking stop recording. Good night. See it, or whatever time it is. Why am... Sometimes I think I might be OCD. And then I look at that big-ass dust bunny off camera right now, and then I remember I'm not OCD, or else that would not be there. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys. Fucking, I don't know, man. Just look at the video's over.